Hello again everyone, Melth here, with another Baldur's Gate 3 XP optimization guide. This time I'll talk about the world's first run that I'm aware of that gets to level 12 in Act 2, and how I accomplished that. This will be an expansion upon my previous guide video about getting to level 11 before fighting Ketheric. If you haven't seen that one already, I recommend checking it out first. It'll cover more of the basics of how XP optimization works in this game. A lot of the tricks today will be weirder and more advanced than those ones, although some of them are still pretty normal things you can do in any kind of run, I would say. As with my previous guide, this is meant to be a menu of options that you can pick and choose from according to your roleplay goals and things like that for your run. Not all these tricks will fit with every single run. Some of them are pretty hard to justify in character, for one thing. If you don't do all of them, you won't get to level 12 in Act 2. There's not much room for error there. But you'll still be higher level throughout the entire game, which means more time playing with your fun multi-class builds and things like that. Plus, I just think it's interesting to see what can be done in this game from a standpoint of theoretical optimization, even if I wouldn't do all these things on a serious roleplay run. Well, when starting off your XP maximization run, you definitely want to play as the Dark Urge, because the Dark Urge gets twice as much inspiration and XP as anyone else in Act 1, pretty much. It has a terrible Act 2, but that doesn't really matter. As I mentioned on my previous guide video, you can easily pass inspiration XP from your main character to your side characters, but never vice versa. And so it works out okay to have a good Act 1 on the main character, because you can just pass the XP to everyone else who had a bad Act 1, and then their superior Act 2s will get them ahead of where they would otherwise have been. And so you end up with a stronger party overall with a bit more XP. Inspiration is definitely the smallest and least consequential XP source in the game, but if you're trying to maximize things, it is worth several hundred to you. I'm going to talk now about how to get some of the more obscure Dark Urge XP in Act 1 in particular. So one source of XP that you start working on from the beginning of the game is Panoply of Agony. You get that for killing an enemy with every damage type. So I would just say make yourself a little set of notes and just write down piercing, bludgeoning, slashing, fire, cold, and just cross them out as you go through them one by one. Now, it's pretty easy to do that in the early game, when enemies have few hit points and consumable items that you can just grab for elemental damage of various kinds do a massive proportion of enemy hit points. Harder in the late game, we probably need to actually respec to have different classes and things like that. For example, there's not many sources of radiant damage unless you're a cleric or a paladin. But in the early game, a skeleton like this is pretty fragile, and if I do something like switch to my melee weapon here and just poke it with a short sword, I can probably get it weak enough that a holy water will kill it off.
Blood comes easy these days.
Almost certain to work. There we go, and that was the last one I needed on this run. So just make a little chart for yourself, or set of notes you can cross things off of and just go through the different types. Another trick that you can employ is knocking enemies out and then finishing them off with whatever the element is. And that's kind of doable throughout the entire game, but again, get that XP as early as you can. That's advantageous and it's easier to do. Over here at Blighted Village, by the way, you'll meet the ogres, including Lump the Enlightened. Persuade them to fight for you in exchange for the corpses of the fallen. That gives you Dark Urge inspiration. So here at the Goblin camp and the temple nearby is where we can get a lot of important Dark Urge inspirations in the early game. One to talk about first of all is for poisoning the booze here. That gives us the Now It's a Party inspiration. It also gives us 70 XP, but 5 goblins will usually die. The trouble is, we don't get XP for those goblins, and they're worth more than 70 XP. So you end up kind of losing XP on that if you do it conventionally. What you want to do optimally, actually, is leave only Sharp Eye Murg alive here. Slaughter every other goblin, leave just Murg alive, and then you come back and poison the booze. Because then Murg will do the cutscene about drinking that and getting a toast or whatever. You get the full poison XP, but only Murg is dying as a result. The important thing is just that you get an extra 55 XP at least that way, because Murg is only worth 15 in combat. This is also your chance to easily get the Killing Spree inspiration for killing 5 enemies at once. But that must be done in combat. That's crucial. So what we're going to do here is, I don't know, I'm going to punch like that guy. Combat begins. Then I'm going to have the Dark Urge fireball everyone here except for Murg. Glorious. So now we just kill everyone but Murg, and then we just walk on out of here, essentially. So at this point I killed everyone else, I put Merg to sleep, and we're just running away to end the combat. That's an important technique to bear in mind. It'll be useful for a lot of tricks throughout the rest of this run. You can end combat with anyone who's temporarily hostile by just running away really fast, among other methods. Alright, combat over, Goblin slaughtered. We walk back in here and we'll just now easily poison the booze tub. We get the inspiration immediately.
This individual doesn't seem particularly fond of me.
We might need to give her a little bit of money, but that doesn't matter. We get that back once we kill her. So we begin the competition again. Some guy who's already dead is drinking.
What you standing here all dry for? Come here, have a drink. What should we toast to? Ha! A toast! Bravo! Now get out of...
Alright, so there she goes, and that's fine. We get 70 XP after that. So we netted plus 55 there for killing only her with the poison, plus the inspiration. And we got killing spree out of that. Now the next inspiration might seem superficially similar to killing spree, but it's a lot more complicated. This one is Unfriendly Fire. You get it by killing 5 neutral creatures, that is, yellow creatures, in combat. And again, it must be in combat. That's really tough because of several reasons. One is there just aren't, ever fights where there are 5 neutral creatures in the game. That almost never happens. Let alone 5 that are so weak you can kill them all in one round with one character. But I found a way to do that early on in the game. We need Gribbo to be alive for this. This one goblin. She's the one who usually is keeping Volo prisoner in this cage over there. So when you free Volo, make sure to spare her so she comes over here. The reason is that for whatever reason, the other goblins don't care if you assault her. That will be key here. That makes them not become red units toward us. So, let's take maybe just the Dark Urge down here into the spider pit now.
Out of sight, out of mind.
I've got Speak with Animals on so I can chat them up. I can't believe it's not deception to say the goblins taste delicious. I mean, besides being just filthy, goblins aren't good at anything, and that includes tasting good.
Delicious.
Alright. Now we must make sure the spiders don't randomly aggro to draw rags on those guys up above. They must come out the main direction and end up in the main goblin group that we were just talking to. We need combat to begin over here with all these goblins. Okay, now we assault Gribbo in a way that won't kill her. The key thing about that is that aggro's just her and not the other goblins. So now we're in combat with at least 5 yellow units. We actually have our chance. It's still not trivial to do this in a single round with just the Dark Urge, but it is doable. If the rest of the parties weaken the enemy and set them up, and then the Dark Urge uses things like haste to get extra actions and extra attacks, you can get yourself to the 5 kills you need. That's how I'd recommend getting that in the early game, which is worth a good chunk of XP, really. Nothing to do with this fight, by the way, but one last Dark Urge inspiration in the area. Go over here and torture poor Liam, who the goblins have on that rack. I would never do that normally, but it's worth Dark Urge inspiration. I recommend looking up the list of Dark Urge inspiration XP on the wiki in general and trying to follow that, but these are the ones that are special and hard to get, I would say. So take care of those ones here at the Goblin Camp and also the Ogre one over in the Blighted Village. Before we get back to weird stuff, a little simple bit of XP is killing this one spare Intellect Devourer on the Nautiloid. One crucial thing to bear in mind here is, do not bring us with you. If us is nearby, he'll become permanently hostile to you. You can kill him for XP at that point, but then you're giving up having us for the rest of the game, which I would say is probably not worth it for 10 XP. But you could do that, I guess. The reason I didn't mention that Intellect Devourer in my previous video, by the way, was that I had falsely read that fighting him on the Nautiloid means you fight fewer Intellect Devourers here in the Nautiloid crash site. That's totally wrong, though. The number of Intellect Devourers here is just all about whether or not you have an extra party member, like Shadowheart recruited. If you do, you fight 3 Intellect Devourers. If not, it's only 2. So just recruit Shadowheart, basically, and you're good to go. Now, also in this area, as I mentioned on the previous video, is this little natural bridge you can jump up onto. When you walk over here, you get Exploration XP. Maximizing that is one of the best and most important things you can do for maximizing XP in this game in general. As a reminder, Exploration XP is the only kind of XP in this game that scales up with your level. If you kill these Intellect Devourers at level 1 or kill them at level 10, you get the same amount of XP from them. Same with Quest XP and Inspiration XP. But the higher level you are when you go to explore an area, the more XP you get. So you end up ahead if you do the combat and Inspiration and Quests first, and the exploration last. We will try on this run to save exploration stuff whenever possible all the way until level 11, when the XP for it is truly maxed out. Now there are, in this game, 4 places where you are supposed to get exploration XP, but due to bugs, you don't. I've found solutions for 2 of those, and a commenter found a solution for a 3rd one that I have refined. But that still leaves 1 bugged exploration place, and it is right here, near these goblin bodies, near the Nautiloid crash site. I don't know why, but you're supposed to get exploration XP for finding this area, and you just never do. Let me know if you find a solution to that, or find out what is bugging it. In the other 3 cases that I was able to find a solution for, it's about a cinematic, basically, that breaks things. But there's no cinematic in this area, so I'm not sure what that would be about. In any case, 5 points to Ravenclaw if you can find out how we get this exploration XP. So our next bit of exploration XP that's bugged is here at the Emerald Grove. We were supposed to get a small reward for finding it, but due to complications involving the cutscene where the goblins attack and things like that, we won't get that if we resolve things normally here. I have found some solutions. So the obvious and not so good solution is use super jump and things like that to jump up over to here, basically, and then you can sneak on into the grove and go into that area, and then you get the XP. The trouble with that, though, is that will then skip to this battle being done and all the goblins dead, which means you miss out on that XP, which is worth a heck of a lot more. So that's pretty bad. The other problem with it is that we are only level 2 at this point. You cannot get to 3 at this point without either going to Withers' Tomb, which would be counterproductive because that has exploration XP, which we want to save like forever if we can, or doing some kind of weird exploit to fight the Oathbreaker Knight in your camp at this point. I guess could get you there, but that would be strange and tricky to do at level 2. So it's just not really ideal to do that skip at this point. That doesn't really help us overall. What we should do instead, I think, is like so.
Open the bloody gate!
So we'll start things off conventionally here, just trying to kill off a few initial goblins and thin the herd. Now always remember, as I mentioned before, throwing weapons is extremely powerful at this point in the game, but only do it if you're 100% certain you won't get the kill with gravity damage. If you ever have that happen, you lose the XP, and there's no remedy for that. And I'm actually going to have her jump away at this point, and then start running, and go to camp, I'd say. She can then just, in sneak mode, freely move, and we'll have her walk over, let's say hereabouts. That's about where we want to be eventually. Battle's going on in the meantime. Another one bites the dust.
Have to keep going. Just out of here.
You only really need to get 2 people out of here minimum, but more can be helpful, of course. So here we go. At this point, the entire party has escaped from the combat, but the combat is still going on. And it can go on like this forever, with a bird just locking them in turn-based mode here. And from here, if you really want to push it, you can now just go across the river to the north and, go for XP, kill the paladins, kill the gnolls, kill the Zentrum, whatever, get to level 5, and then come back here for maximum exploration XP. I wouldn't really want, in this state, where the Goblin Gate battle has not concluded, to go off to the main Goblin adventure sections. I'd be afraid of breaking quests there, to be honest. And I don't want to delay going to the Emerald Grove for too long anyway, because it's very useful and there's a lot of good XP to be had there. But at the very least, get out now with at least 2 people and have them level up to level 3. So at this point, I use a super jump to get on into the Emerald Grove, And then I will super jump over to where the ladder is. And then if I walk down the ladder because the battle is still ongoing, I should get the exploration XP. And note that it's 30, which is the reward for having a level 3 party, even though the person finding it is level 2, and in fact 2 party members are level 2. What matters basically is if half of the party are at the new level, then you get the higher level XP amount. That's what counts. So at this point, we now wrap up this battle just fine. So the next bit of exploration XP that's bugged is actually super late in the game at Moonrise Towers, but for some reason, fixing it actually starts now. We need to not recruit Wyll. Ever. If Wyll was ever in your party, even if he permadies or permanently leaves the party later on, you have forever lost your chance at getting Moonrise Towers exploration XP. It seems like it's just related to if Mazora's possible cutscene for the bridge was ever loaded into the game's assets or whatever, you have forever lost your chance. Even if Mazora is dead, you still don't get it. The only other workaround apparently is if you skip the entire Goblin Gate battle, you can then recruit Wyll and things will be okay, but that means missing out on that big chunk of XP, so I'd say that's probably not worth it either, really. So if you want to get that XP, you just can't recruit Wyll. Now I like Wyll, but a lot of people out there I know hate him, so perhaps that won't be a problem for those people. In any case, I didn't know about this not recruiting Wyll thing during this run, so you'll see me using him, and I did not get the Moonrise Towers XP here, but it's good to know about. You can definitely make it be worth 500 or something like that, and I'll talk about how to optimize that when we get to the appropriate time later on. Now another quirky thing that I mentioned was not going to Withers' tomb, which is usually one of my first stops, of course, because getting the ability to respec early on is crucial given how just god-awful the starting builds are for most of the characters. But there is a workaround way to get Withers without going to his tomb. What I would recommend doing is, after you talk to people in the Emerald Grove a bit, go up here to the area behind Zevlor, use Featherfall and Long Jump and jump down here to where Karlach is. You can then recruit Karlach, which by the way means Wyll will show up in camp to try to kill her later on. You must kill Wyll at that time because again, you cannot allow Wyll to ever be in the party. Anyway, at that point, we can walk along the river hereabouts, we can collect the smuggler's ring from that skeleton. Side note, do not look at these skeletons here. You do not want to identify their armor and end up losing some sage inspiration from identifying that later on. You can skip the gnolls over here, though they're a pretty easy fight. Remember, as I said in my previous video, to let them turn from hyenas into gnolls for maximum XP. And then hereabouts, we can jump across this little bridge.
Like a brisk stroll through the forest to invigorate the spirit.
I was just thinking the same thing, but less poetically.
Then if you use Featherfall and a bit of Long Jump. So what we do now is we just jump on down with Featherfall and Enhanced Leap, and we can make our way to the Goblin camp. And once we hop down thereabouts, we'll get the cutscene where the artifact saves us from the Absolute's control. After that, we're done here. We can just go to camp, and Withers will then show up at that point. There he is. Now, I mentioned before that at the Grove, you should talk to everyone, because almost everyone gives you a bit of XP for chatting them up, or starting some kind of quest with them, or things like that. I didn't mention that includes Anti-Ethel. If you ask for help with your tadpole specifically, not with other problems like being the Dark Urge, you'll get a bit of XP for that, so make sure to include her on your list of everyone to talk to. Now, for the Arabella questline, one thing that some of us forget about is making sure to actually talk to Arabella's parents before going to rescue Arabella. Just in general, once you know how the game works and how the story goes, it's easy to forget and skip certain things, and then you miss out on quest XP that way. So, don't do that. Talk to everyone.
I'd sooner trek through the 9.
She was caught. Fool.
Hurry!
So there we go, 15 XP. So before going in to save Arabella, have someone that has Silence available. As a reminder, Silence is a level 2 spell. It's available to clerics and bards if they're 3rd level or higher. A few other classes too, but those are the obvious ones.
Well, in it.
So, we're going to go in through this door and then we don't want to move. So the next thing to think about here is Kagha's snake, Tila. Tila is the one that usually will murder Arabella if you don't intervene. Now the trouble is Tila only exists in this one cutscene. After that she just vanishes from the game forever. Even if you fight Kagha later on, Tila is just never ever seen again. So if we want Tila's XP, we must act now. As you can see, Tila is very weak and easy to kill, but the problem is of course if we kill Tila, then Kagha will not surprisingly get mad at us. There is, however, a solution. So we're gonna cast silence so that she can't talk. Then we're gonna go select Karlach. Come on, select Karlach. Shoot, go. There we go. The bolt impacted, we get our 5 XP, and because she was silenced, Kagha does nothing. And then we can just end the silence and proceed with things as normal. Nothing suspicious about what just happened at all. You do need to be fast there though, otherwise the cutscene will just begin anyway, so watch out for that. Not that it matters that much, it is just 5 XP, but you might as well get it and kill the evil snake. Don't forget to read this book as part of the Investigate Kagha quest, by the way. That's worth 15 XP right there. Another bit of XP that I never got before this run is the XP for stealing Crusher's ring off of his foot. I've never got that because you have to actually submit and kiss his foot rather than just butcher him on the spot, which is my usual urge when I'm dealing with goblins in any situation. But do that, get 15 XP, then you can kill him later on. We're at the Goblin camp. For now I want to focus on smithing. It is crucial, by the way, do not free Saza before you come here, or you'll lose your chance forever to save smithing. It's pretty weird that way, it's completely unrelated, but that's just the way it is. Oh, by the way, while you're here, don't forget to rhyme with Wyll. You have just one chance to do that too, as I recollect. So, rhyme with Volo, then we're going to talk our way past these guards, and then just run pell-mell into the sanctuary, ignoring everything. So we just run straight on through. I recommend hanging a left here is your best chance to avoid a guard, although there's a bit of luck to that. 2 goblins will be preparing to push Smithin into a pit full of spiders, and you need to stop that from happening to get XP. But it's pretty darn weird how it works. Turn-based mode won't save him, all kinds of logical things won't save him. I recommend sleep. That's your best bet. If you ever hear them do their second line, it's all over. Skip that ally, don't let them have a chance to catch up and get to him. They will chase after him, and they're faster than him, they'll shove him, and regardless of logic, he'll just sometimes randomly die. You must make sure he gets out to the gate alive. Only then do you get the XP. So as you saw there, I went into sneak mode so the guard wouldn't arrest me, put them to sleep. That's the best method, I think. There are some others that can work, but that one's pretty darn reliable. Come on, keep moving, Smithin. Don't get distracted. There we go. Okay. Smithin dealt with. Now we can go back. Now we can bring Saza through for her request. Another thing to do here on your first trip, before getting branded, is to save Brockall, the faithful of Maglubiot, over here. Near the way into where Dror Ragzlin is waiting. Avoid Dror Ragzlin, go over here, kill these goblins, and then you can disarm this trap and free the guy. There's a right way to handle that mission that is worth more XP. So we're going to let Brockall out, having killed these goblins.
Breathe quiet.
He will hop out.
Thanks for breaking me.
He thanks us, we get XP for that. We go into turn-based mode fast, and then we just kill him. Gives us a net plus 15 XP compared to just, killing him normally. Knocking him out works too, doesn't really matter.
Castle with...
Another minor thing, you'll find a lot of rats around the Goblin Sanctuary. There's a lot of them, you might as well kill them, they're worth 1 XP apiece. It'll add up over the course of the game if you kill all the rats. Now, speaking of vermin, the Zentrum slavers are over here, and you can buy and sell things from them, but more importantly, once you're done buying and selling things from them, you can knock them out. Now, I've mentioned before that in this game, you never get double XP if you knock someone out and then kill them later on or things like that. That was a bug that used to exist but was patched out. You can never really get double XP from the same person. Except, it turns out, if that person levels up over the course of the story, which Roa and her friends both do. When we meet them at Moonrise, they'll be higher level than this. So if we knock them out here, they'll make it to Moonrise, be higher level then, and we can kill them then for even more XP. Knocking them all out now is worth 60, so do that once you finish shopping with them and before fighting all the Goblin leaders, because they just disappear at that point. Oh, one last little thing in the Goblin Fortress area, by the way. I recommend trying to solve this moon puzzle not by doing the actual moon puzzle itself, but just by hitting that lever over there, which you can spot and then unlock. If you do that, you can bypass the moon puzzle and save it for later, and you can still get the same XP for the party overall eventually that way. But this way, you can save the sage inspiration that you get from doing that puzzle for a time when it's actually helpful. In Act 2 or so, when you've already exhausted all of the Dark Urge inspiration XP, pass that on to Gale or your other sages, and then you can go back and have them get their Sage XP to actually be permanently ahead. So, I recommend doing it that way if you can. Skip the moon puzzle, just spot the lever on the wall, pull that thing open, and then you can go down to the Underdark this way, and that's the most effective way I'd say to do that. I think between this and my previous video, I've now talked about most of the ways to squeeze extra XP out of Goblin stuff. Let's finish with resolving Kagha's questline here. Now, I've previously tended to pick the option where we fight with Kagha and everyone else, but I've realized actually the smartest thing to do, if you can justify it from a roleplay perspective, is to start off with Kagha on your side, convince her to help you, and then betray her afterward and kill her at that point.
Go on. As you say, Oladin.
So we try to persuade her. I have the wrong person up front for this job.
No! You...
Kagha's voice breaks and her lips tremble. She heard reason in your words.
There we go. She'll help us. It'll be a really easy fight. We got 45 XP there, and when we kill her later on or KO her or whatever, we will then get the normal XP for defeating her. Also during this fight, by the way, try to kill or knock out Findal. This is a good opportunity for it. Because you won't get in trouble for it during the fight, and this is kind of your only chance. Not quite, but after you rescue him from the Goblin tunnels, he shows up here for a while, but then he'll vanish at some point, usually around the time the Goblin siege happens, and just never be seen again. So if you want his XP, you kind of got to get him in this time window between rescuing him and doing the Goblin siege. Like was with Bosk the bear, Bosk also disappears around that same time, never to be seen again. So deal with Bosk and Findal during this period before the Goblin siege happens. One source of XP I couldn't fully figure out, actually, is Roland. Roland levels up over the course of the game. Twice, in fact, I believe. And he's not quite the only character to do so. Zevlor's another good example, and there are a few others, like Karis, the Tiefling leader who sometimes replaces Zevlor. If you knock those characters out repeatedly when they're at different levels, they're worth fresh XP each time. So you should take that opportunity whenever you can, except I can't find any safe time to knock out Roland in Act 1. If you knock him out at any point in Act 1, as far as I can tell, he just won't show up at all in Act 2, and a bunch of other Tieflings die as a result. I've tried KOing him, here at the Grove at the beginning. I've tried KOing him during the Goblin Siege. I've tried KOing him before the party here. I've tried KOing him at the party. Doesn't matter. If at any point he's been knocked out, it seems like you just can't get him in Act 2. But let me know if you find a way. That'll be worth 20 XP. Oh, speaking of Zevlor, by the way, you should definitely knock out Zevlor in Act 1 for 75 XP, but the timing of it is pretty important. If you knock him out before the Goblin Siege, then you end up with the Goblin Siege just being skipped and the Goblins just win and kill all the Tieflings. So don't do that. You can knock him out at the party just fine. Or, right now would also be a fine time if we went up and found him up thereabouts, as I did. Speaking of knocking out Zevlor before the party, by the way, if you also knocked out certain other Tiefling civilians and so forth, then at the party they'll be replaced with these Tieflings that you only ever see under this circumstance, like this guy Kivak here. He only exists at the party, and only if, I think it is Ikaron in his case, is either dead or unconscious when the party should be happening. A few other ones like Kavil and Vatas and Zay fit the same model there. You can get, I think, about 5 extra XP that way, if you then take these guys, drag them over to a dark corner, and beat them unconscious too. A rather high amount of effort for very small reward, but hey, it's a clever way to get 5 more XP, I guess. To talk about some Underdark stuff, by the way, I mentioned before that you can get some XP for not attacking Gek immediately, but befriending him. You can actually get even more by saying that you have the boots, which you can get peacefully from the gnome. You don't even need to hand them over either, just show that you've got them and you get the XP for that.
Look at that.
A couple things to talk about here at the Arcane Tower nearby. One of them is, you can get some Sage Inspiration you probably want to save the first time you disable an Arcane turret with a Susser Bloom. So you can kill them if you want to, just make sure you don't bring a Susser Bloom near them accidentally. Come back and do that on purpose to then get some XP for your Sage characters at that point, when it's a good time when it'll actually give you an advantage. Also, there is Exploration XP that'll hit you if you go around this point, past this second Arcane turret. However, if you go to the side entrance instead, hopping out over those mushrooms and down that way, you can actually do the entire tower without getting this exploration XP. So you can just save that entirely and then come back for it at level 11. So I highly recommend doing that. One little bit of XP I didn't mention on the previous video is right here in the Arcane Tower, on one of the middle floors. This Chest of the Mundane looks like it contains junk items, but if you drag them out of it or bring the Susser Blossom over near them, you'll see that they're actually various magic items. Now, the thing that's interesting about it, though, is if you put an item into it, that's worth XP for whatever reason. Doesn't really matter what it is. So, got some XP there, then you can get your stuff back out. One minor useful thing to know in the Underdark, by the way, is when you get the Dwergar boat, the one guarded by Gek Cole, you can ride it out to where the Dwergar boat battle happens, kill all those Dwergar, and then just turn back. That works just fine, and in fact I recommend doing that. So you get the boat battle XP, but don't go to Grimforge. Which is key, because Grimforge, once you go to it on the boat, you instantly get exploration XP that we'd rather delay, actually. So, fight the guys on the boat, and then turn back. So here in the Haggler, by the way, just one thing to not do. Do not go through this doorway here until later on, because there's actually not one as I thought before, but 2 bits of exploration XP you'll get back there, between this doorway, which you can only pass through with the Whispering Mask on, and the Underdark area with the illusory mushrooms. One of them you tend to get the XP during a loading screen, so you won't often see it until you check the combat log, but there are 2 XP spots in there, save them both. One very minor bit of XP is after you finish helping Mayrina and giving her zombified husband back, you can just kill him for 3 XP and she doesn't mind at all. I guess after all that you've gone through to help her and so forth, letting you shoot an arrow into her zombie husband is the least that she can do. So here at Waukeen's Rest, I have to recommend 1 or 2 changes to the routine, which are pretty hard to justify. Number 1 is you need to actually, before attacking the Flaming Fist here, interact with them at the doors here. You don't need to actually help them, just come up to the door and click on it while they're still working on it. Only after that should you then go ahead and attack them. I find that very hard to justify, though. Even harder to justify, if the Dark Urge is ahead of the rest of the party on XP, then what you should do is free Benram initially from where he's trapped.
Fire! Hurry! Get this thing off me!
That gets you some XP, then let him out of there. You can start the dowry quest or whatever, but you must not turn in the dowry to him. If you turn in the dowry to him, then a couple things happen. One is that door gets sealed off, but more importantly also, you can no longer get the Dark Urge inspiration for having him burned to death in the fire, which is still actually available now. So we're going to let the fire spread a bit.
On it.
Okay, so we now start using improvised melee weapon to grab poor Benram and carry him into the fire. Crucially, we need to not kill him ourselves, we must let the fire do the job. He will try to run away and heal. You must not allow him to do so. There we go. So, as I said, if and only if the Dark Urge is ahead of the rest of the party on XP, then that's a net profit for you of 5 XP, because you can then pass the XP to the rest of the party. Otherwise, complete the dowry quest and get your 25 XP from him rather than the 30 for that inspiration. It seems insanely hard to justify, but it is optimal for XP purposes. Now, in a major change compared to my previous guide, I highly recommend following this exact order for events as you move into areas like the Shadowcurse Lands, Grimforge, and Rosenborn Monastery. So first of all, come here to where the Githyanki battle area is, and go ahead and talk to and then knock out Elika. Now, down there below, you'll be able to see that there are, as I talked about in the previous video, 4 Flaming Fists about to be killed in the cutscene by the Githyanki, and their dragon, more importantly. But the trouble is that we can't approach. If we get any closer, the cutscene will begin. So we can't really do anything to intervene in that cutscene ourselves. Now, as I showed in the previous video, you can summon a mage hand over here, give it a smoke powder bomb, and have it throw that down there to kill off those 3 flaming fists behind Dion, which gives you 120 XP for free. Pretty nice. But that will never kill Dion, because for whatever random reason, he just is instantly gone once that happens. So you can't get his 40 XP. But a commenter plus some experimentation on my own has found a way. So what I recommend is have a party member become an arcane trickster, and then carefully walk them around this way and circle around to the base of these stone steps. Where Gale is about as far as you can go. Don't try to walk down the stone steps, that for some reason will trigger the cutscene prematurely. So now what we do is we summon our mage hand, ungroup it, and have it drink an elixir of hill giant strength. Yeah, that's right, mage hands can drink somehow. But us, the brain companion, can't. That gives it enough strength that it can now pick up a humanoid, such as Dion. But of course, mage hands can't do improvised weapon, which is the best way to carry people around. So we must instead rely upon throws. But we need to be very careful with them. So I'm going to click to throw here. And then I immediately cancel that with a right click. You must be very, very fast, because if you actually throw them, then that begins the cutscene and ruins everything. Just the instant he's grabbed, you cancel it. And you repeat that process, dragging him over to here, doable in a couple of minutes, and then you have someone who's strong enough to actually properly grab him with an improvised weapon, drag him, and teleport him away to some other distant waypoint. At that point, you do the bomb throw trick, and while the cutscene is going, you then have whoever carried him off, then murder him. He shouldn't disappear once he's been teleported to another area, basically. So, that's how you take care of that. But there's much more to my new procedure for how to deal with the later zones. Alright, so at this point, I have taken out the 3 flaming fists down below, and Dion. So now what we're going to do is, we actually don't want to fight the Githyanki. My new order is that we avoid these guys for now, and we instead go to the Goblin camp area, and then go to the other entrance to the mountain pass south of there. That will actually allow us to kill Kudanos the dragon later on. The only way to do that I'm aware of.
Too much trouble.
So we're going to run on south to the other mountain pass entrance. Alright, so here we are, ready to go. As always, of course, make sure you're not doing this until after you've dealt with the goblins and tieflings fully, and done the goblin siege and all that stuff. One minor and fun thing, by the way. This shouldn't be available for you if you've been following my advice and therefore have not recruited Wyll in the first place. But if you have recruited Wyll, and every single night before you go to bed you have killed Wyll, Mizora can't give him his set of horns. Should do one less attempt to do so when you try to leave for the mountain pass for the first time. But if you killed Wyll right before that, then instead just kind of show up in camp and just like hang out here. We can't really do much with her, except we actually could drag her off into a corner there and beat her unconscious or kill her if we have good enough, damage per second basically for 1 XP. It's not worth very much, but you don't get many chances to screw over Mizora, so I definitely love it for that reason. As I said though, if you're following my advice, don't recruit Wyll in the first place, because only by not recruiting Wyll can you get the Moonrise Towers XP. Alright, so here we are at the other entrance to the mountain pass. Now, as I mentioned in the previous video, there's an exploration zone right hereabouts that's a large zone, and therefore you really want to put off until higher level if you can skip it, which we can. So what I recommend doing is go over here and use either fly or a combination of long jump plus feather fall to skip over to where Esther is.
You have my attention.
So we jump on over here, right over to this edge. If we give ourselves feather fall, we should be able to jump right on down to where Esther is waiting, I believe. There we go. One little side tip, by the way. After getting the quest from Esther to get the Githyanki egg, I have found that you can sometimes go ahead and knock her out and then come back later on and do the quest as normal. I can't get it to work all the time, sometimes that fails the quest, but it is worth attempting that at the very least, because that gives you, 75 XP up front. And getting XP up front is worth a fair amount, because that lets you get to higher levels before doing some mandatory exploration, basically. Anyway, as before, I then say, you know, ride the lift down and get the Rosemary Monastery waypoint down thereabouts, and then you can make your way back up, deal with the undead, and without going into the monastery or anywhere near it, you then move on actually to the Shadow-Cursed lands. So, here we are, past the undead battle. Down below waiting for us is Elminster. Now, I've made a video about a trick that I discovered that you can use to kill Elminster while still saving Gale and getting the ability to control his Netherese orb. However, with some experimentation of my own and some suggestions from a commenter, I found a possibly even better way to handle things there. So what I recommend then is actually sneak by him with an invisibility potion. If you have Elminster active, sometimes he'll try to talk to you actively when you go by. We don't want that. So, drink that potion, run on through like this. That will then teleport everyone to the Shadow-Cursed lands. One of the nice things about Act 2, I say nice for this purpose, is that it's really kind of empty and kind of not as well put together as Act 1. And one sign of that is that there's basically no exploration XP in it, and most of what exists there is bugged anyway. So, you're basically free to explore the Shadow-Cursed lands in whatever way you like, with no consequences. Whereas Grimforge and lots of places throughout the Rosemary Monastery and Mountain Pass area are littered with exploration XP that you want to avoid. So it actually makes sense to go to the Shadow-Cursed lands first, and then only after that backtrack to deal with things in and around Rosemorn and Grimforge. At least for purposes of maximizing XP. That does mean delaying certain kinds of items, but you get other items faster to make up for that, so, you know, choose what makes sense for your run and your balance of goofy XP maximization versus getting good items that you're going for. Alright, so we're going to kill this goblin here, of course. So, as we approach the Absolute Cult here, things get a bit weird. What I recommend you do actually now is shoot the hyena. I've already done that. Then they'll get mad at you, of course, and then at that point, having been caught, you just run away. And then that will break off combat. It is crucial that they actually catch you, though. If they just go looking around for you, then things won't work. So, we have been caught, now we will just ignore them and run over here toward this building. When you get around there, the Absolute Caravan will then show up. I used to do things via the Harper ambush. That is not a good idea, though, actually. You can get 200 extra XP this way. Because if you talk them into giving you the lantern, you get 200 XP right there. Then later on, you can fight the now dead caravan members. And you can also fight the Harpers that would have been at the ambush at Lashlight Inn.
Your followers are...
Yeah, we're boss.
So we just reveal ourselves here.
The Drider's eyes cut through.
your true soul.
Being a bard makes this easy, though anyone can try these checks.
Mere song.
You must have blessed them.
Majesty.
So they relinquish the lantern, but that's not enough. We now have to tell them to go.
What do you mean, go?
We can't go without you.
This is not Her Majesty's will. If it is.
You can't be serious.
So the narrator will talk as though they're already dead, though they're actually just fine, and we can see that and follow them for quite a while. Alright, off they go. And we got 200 XP for that. And as I said, we can then find them and kill them later on in the Wraithwind town area. Then we pick up the Moon Lantern as usual and free the Pixie as usual. Definitely not worth, for all kinds of reasons, killing her for the Dark Urge. For one thing, as far as I can tell, that just, doesn't give you the inspiration that it's supposed to. But even if it did, it wouldn't be worth as much as, freeing her is worth. And then, of course, that's besides the fact that she is a massive help. Okay, so what we do now is, we're not going to Last Light Inn, but we are moving north through the Shadow-Cursed lands. Go past the Tiefling bodies there, run over this away, and we'll go up, and now, if we just skip Last Light Inn, we can get to the point where we need to save the Harpers from the shadows and get that XP too. And we sneak on up so we can help them more easily, and then the fight will begin. And we'll, as usual, save at least one of them, so then we get a bit of extra XP.
Stop! Harpers!
Alright, so the battle is pretty straightforward from here. I've talked about it on my previous run. Just the important thing is it turns out you can get this battle coming from the Mountain Pass side as long as you skip Last Light Inn and just come here immediately. Alright, so we continue up this path, past where the Harpers were, and then we'll go to the entrance that would lead to Grimforge. One crucial thing to say, by the way, is whatever you do, do not go down that elevator to Grimforge to access it from behind. If you do, not only will you get no exploration XP for finding Grimforge that way, but also you'll somehow lock yourself out of ever getting it by coming in from the front entrance. So do not use that elevator. Alright, so we come over here, we'll talk to Elminster, that'll send him to camp, and then from there we'll have an easier time with the trick of killing him after he gives the charm to Gale.
Nigh on 13 centuries old, and he's wise choice.
Alright, so off we go. Alright, so they're in camp, so now we do a trick similar to what I talked about before. They're talking to Elminster, although they're nowhere near him. And we advance that conversation until we get to the point where he says he'll bestow the charm, and at that point you can then have someone strong enough to try to pick him up with improvised weapon. And then the difference is, based on what a commenter found, you can try to just pitch him off one of the cliffs that are available in this camp. That won't work as far as I can tell in the Mountain Pass one, because those cliffs seem to have invisible walls blocking them, but this one doesn't. So if, as happened with the other trick, the camp aggroes without Elminster aggroing, that'll work perfectly, you can just do what I did. But if they don't aggro, you can then just carry him and pitch him off a cliff, and that will give you the 1000 XP for Elminster while keeping Gale forever. If you don't care about Gale, I guess you can just kill Elminster or whatever. Alright, then having done that stuff, we actually want to leave the Shadow-Cursed lands and go back to where we were before. So here we are walking up among the Githyanki again, and this is a key difference. Before they pull us into conversation, and then no matter what you did to Kudenos, he would instantly fly away. But now that we've been to Act 2 and come back, now we can actually kill Kudenos. Now that's not easy. He has a lot of hit points, good armor class, and resists some elements and whatever. But you can kill him. You can either get over here and be very patient and just shoot at him repeatedly and just keep making your stealth checks and then he won't heal himself as you slowly whittle him down. Or just drop a bajillion bombs around him and set those all off. But you get 250 XP for that. So once we've killed Kudenos, there's sadly nothing on his body. Pretty boring. But then we can just go ahead and chat up Voss, who doesn't care about you killing his dragon, and you can just persuade him that you'll help, blocking from reading your mind, and so forth, like we did in the previous run. Then things get a little bit different, because now Voss won't run away either. So now what we do is we attack them, knock out Voss, kill the rest of them. Now, knocking out Voss doesn't give us more XP than what we did before, it just gives it the XP earlier, compared to if we waited for him to come to our camp later on. So knock him out here, and he'll still come to your camp later on with his raider, so you can get that XP as well. One last thing, when you kill Sarth Baretha, make sure to read on her body the elaborate slate. That gives you 30 XP for information about the monastery crash. Alright, with that complex beginning out of the way, we can now get into Act 2 properly. And I found a very interesting trick that is worth almost 1000 XP here. Now I hope you've been following my advice about not going near Last Light Inn so far, because even approaching it seems to lock you out of part of this trick. So what we do now is we have Shovel turn invisible and run over toward Last Light Inn. See, Last Light Inn is one of those places in the game that is meant to give you exploration XP. In this case, a fixed amount of 280, not dependent on your level. But it's bugged. The initial cutscene will just override it and you'll never get what you're supposed to be getting. If you have Shovel go in invisibly, you can get it as long as no one else has been close to it. Sometimes an invisible party member can do it, but don't count on it. It often seems to lock me out of it forever. So walk Shovel on in there, and where you get it doesn't seem to always be consistent, but somewhere around here should work. Sometimes I must go all the way to the fountain, sometimes around here I get it. There we go, I got it this time. But yeah, just have Shovel mill around here, you'll get it eventually. As long as that is your party hasn't come too close. Now notice something interesting. Besides Jahira and so forth here, and a few generic harpers, we also have Marcus here, actually, and Maul at the same time. So here's where the next part of the trick that gives you the rest of the almost 1000 XP comes in. Let's have the rest of the party get close, but not begin the conversation. See, as mentioned in the previous video, if Maul is dead, then instead Marcus vouches for you here. And then Marcus, if you antagonize him, summons these 13 crawling claws that are worth a ton of XP. But if Maul is alive, that won't happen and Marcus will just be gone. But of course, the only way to have Maul be dead is to have sided with the goblins, and then that's not at all worth it and loses you much more XP. But I found a solution. So we advance a little closer there. And then let's attack, I don't know, Maul. So she won't die because kids are immortal in this game, but Shovel's gonna die. Alright, but then that will have made Maul run away. So now we run on in there fast while Maul is gone and begin the conversation. Skip on through it in case Maul comes walking back. So now Marcus speaks up because Maul has run away. She'll be back, she'll be fine, but she's away for a few seconds here while Marcus instead intervenes on our behalf.
Sick intensity as his voice.
So now we say he's infected too. And on his turn, he will summon all the hands. Let's have the rest of the party walk away so they don't get clobbered by those in the wrong order, I think. Don't want the hands killing members of the Harpers here.
The dance of death.
So we pass our turn, he summons his hands, and then we can come back over here and do something like throw void bulbs or whatever to take them all out at once. So for here you can just easily kill off the weak hands. They have 2 HP apiece, so they're trivial to kill off, and they're worth 50 XP apiece. With there being 13 of them, that makes 650. So an amazing reward here. And then things just proceed as normal from there. Well, as it turns out, my microphone stopped working after this point. So I'll have to re-record all the tips that I had for getting more XP in the Shadowcursed Lands, Grimforge, and Roseborn Monastery. We'll pick up with that and get to level 12 next time. Thank you for watching, everyone. And a special thank you to my Patreon supporters. The Irreverent Reverend, Master Knight DH, Jackie and Lino, Travis, Andrew Curzon, Troobsy, Oliver, Cronish, Jago, DK in DK, Gregory, Broken Box, Jenna M, Just Becca, Jack, Marcus the Carcass, Nubiana, Discord Colossus, Nicholas Schmuck, Kostya Nesterovich, Frederick Brune, Robin, Stefan Van Zyl, Eddie, Mina, Ali Kasamoglu, Skylar Sauce, Nick Myers, Emp Ninjas, Preben A, Chupatan, Diabetic Cat, Marvin Fang, Max, Afro Zamurai, Step Back Too Deadly, Lodestone, Bic Mars, Brad, IJ23, Rodrigo Lopez Dato, Kevin Ditchide, Silent, Eldritch, Jake Watson, and a name that starts with sword emojis. Have a great day, everyone.